I was going to start the book of Acts with Theophilus, as I mentioned in the last video, but I decided to take a little right turn and go into another subject that we have just completed, and that was the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And resurrection, so this is the topic for this video. In the Bible mentions other resurrections after the resurrection of Jesus. Matthew 27:52 and 53, it says, "And the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the holy ones, having been sleeping, arose, and having come forth from out of the tombs, after his rising up, they entered into the holy city, Jerusalem, and were revealed to many." So that was the first resurrection after the resurrection of Jesus. The next resurrection that I saw was Peter raising Tabitha, Dorcas, in Acts 9:40, who was a woman that did many good deeds. She died, and the people asked Peter to come, and he basically laid over her, and she rose from the dead. The next one, and that was in Acts 9, verse 40 on. And then the next one was Paul raising Eutychus, a young man who fell asleep on the third floor in a window listening to Paul late at night. He fell to the ground, and it says dead. He was dead. And then Paul laid upon him, and he arose. He came back to life. Now, they didn't go up into the air. They just came back to life. But now the first ones that go into the air, it mentions first in 1 Thessalonians 4:16 that the dead in Christ will rise first. And then the next verse, it says, and those that are living will be seized into the air. So we, if we are still around at that time, which might be sooner than we think, then you'll be seized into the air. And so that would be, to me, a type of resurrection, but the death would not happen like with Jesus. So those are different places where a resurrection is mentioned until the next one we come to here in this section. But first, it talks about the seven trumpets. And the fifth trumpet is the resurrection that we'll be going through. And the first trumpet here was incineration. So this is a time that the earth is going to be dealt with severely by God. Terrible things are going to be happening at that time here in the future. Could be not too far in the future. And the first trumpet you have in chapter 8, verse 7, a hail, fire, and a third of the earth is incinerated. Then the second trumpet in 8:8, it has a burning mountain cast into the saltwater sea, and a third of the sea creatures and ships are destroyed. The third trumpet then is in verse 10 of 8, and a star falls from heaven called absinthos, and it poisons the fresh water, the rivers and the lakes. It makes them bitter. Then the fourth trumpet is here in 8:12, and the fourth trumpet is the sun, the moons, and the stars are darkened 1/3 of the day, so they should not appear, and also at night. What that is, we'll find out, and hopefully I won't find out, and you won't find out, but people that are there will find out. Next comes a little excerpt where it says, "Woe, woe, woe to the ones dwelling upon the earth, from the remaining sounds of the trumpet of the three angels being about to trump." And so then it goes into the fifth trumpet and the woes. And the first woe here is the torment of locusts for 5 months. And then the angel of the abyss comes down. His name is Apollyon in Greek, and that's in 9:11, and opens the abyss. And then comes Apollyon. They have a king over them, the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon. The one woe went forth, behold, comes still two after these. Then we go into the sixth trumpet. We have the four angels at the river Euphrates, which ties it into Israel, because Israel is just south of the Euphrates. At this time, they may very well have captured the land up to the Euphrates. That's in 9:14. Then it talks about these horses that have fire, smoke, and sulfur coming from out of their mouths in 9:17 down here. It says a third of the men are killed from the fire, smoke, and sulfur in 9:18. So we first started off with 1/3 killed. This is the second. 2/3 now are killed of the people on the earth. Tremendous destruction. But it says in 9:21 that men repented not, even with all these horrible things taking place. And then in chapter 10, we have an interlude of the angel from heaven with a small scroll. And he tells the person to prophesy, John, I suppose, prophesy over peoples, nations, languages, kings. So after the scroll appears and it's eaten and so forth, we go into the 11th chapter where it talks about the holy city. Now, the holy city here is Jerusalem, because it'll say where the Lord was crucified. And peoples, he is to prophesy over peoples, nations, languages, and kings. And so there are a lot of people still left, and this is in Israel, the holy city. In 11:1, it says, measure the temple of God and the altar. Now, this could very well be the temple that the man of sin enters in 2 Thessalonians 2, because it says there in verse 2, and the outer courtyard of the temple put out, and you should not measure it, for it was given to the nations, and they will tread the city, the holy city, 42 months, 3.5 years of the. Now, this could be the beginning of the tribulation or towards the end, the last 3.5 years of the 7 years of the tribulation. Then comes the two witnesses, which we are going to go through and see the resurrection. In verse 3, and it continues, Ke doso tis thesi martyrisi mu, and I will give to my two witnesses. Now, people have all kinds of ideas who they could be, Zerubbabel and Elisha and so forth. But whoever they are, they will prophesy, Ke prophetevsus sein imeras helias diakosias exikonta, and they will prophesy 1,260 days. And that's 3.5 years. Perivevlimeni sakus, having been clothed in sackcloth, which is a scratchy, like a burlap material that itches and is just horrible against your skin. And people that wore it in the old days were like people that were lamenting somebody's dying, or they wanted to make themselves miserable, appear miserable to others by wearing the sackcloth. In verse 4, uti isin e dio ilei ke e dio liknie e enopion tu kyriou tis gis estose. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands having stood before the Lord of the earth. Now, the Lord of the earth, you could say that that was God or Satan, because Satan is the ruler of the earth, not necessarily the Lord, but I'm not exactly sure which it would be. But anyway, they are sent by God. And then in 5, K etis avtus theli adikise, and if anyone wants to injure them, pir ekporevite ek to stomatos avton, ke katestii tus ekthrus avton. And fire goes forth from out of their mouth and devours their enemies. Now, how they do that, how that works, if this is a figure of speech, of fire words, I'm not sure. But something happens. They have this power from God. Ke etis theli avtus adikis say, and if anyone wants to injure them, uto the avtu apokatin thine, thus must he be killed. Now, this is not anything like with Jesus. The people that want to injure Jesus were not killed, but here they will be killed when they, if they want to harm these two people. In verse 6, uti ekusin exousion klise ton or unknown. These have authority to lock the heaven. Inami iatos vreki tas imeris tis propheties avton, that it should not rain the days of their prophecy. It's interesting. Now, you can see here is two different Greek words, but the same English word, rain. Rain is a noun, and vreki is to rain, water to come down as rain. So I don't know other way you could translate it than the way I did here, but you can see there's two different Greek words, and you can study each one and see what that has to say. And so they have the authority to lock it, and I believe that would be the same as Elisha. I get them mixed up. Elijah or Elisha, one of the two had that power. Ke exousion, ekusin, epi, ton either ton, strephin, afta is ema. And they have authority over the waters to turn them into blood. And this is as Moses. So we have as Moses, as Elijah. Ke patakse, tigin, and pasi pligi, and to strike the earth with every calamity or plague. Osakis eon thelisosin, as often as they should want. Much power for those 3.5 years. In verse 7, Ke oten telesosi tin martyrion av ton, and whenever they should finish their witness. Now, how that happens, how you all of a sudden you're no longer maybe arrested and so forth. It says, to therion, to anavenon ek tis avisu, pise met avton polemon. So whenever they finished the witness, the wild beast ascending from out of the abyss, it was opened up. You remember, it was at the first, the second, the third trumpet. And so that would be the wild beast, we're told in the book of Revelation, is the same as the ancient serpent and Satan. So this is the devil on earth, and he will make war with them. Pisi met avton polemon, ke nikisi avtus, and will overcome them. Somehow he has the power to overcome these men that were sent, ke apokatani avtus, and will kill them. So somehow this beast has power to then get rid of these two men, to kill them. And it says in verse 8, ke ta patomata avton epi tis platiais, tis polios ke megalis, and their corpses will be upon the square of the great city. Now, you could think it was another city. What city is it? But then it says, itis kalite pneumatikos Sodoma ke Aegyptos, spiritually called Sodom in Egypt, opu ke okurios avton estavroti, where even their Lord was crucified. So it's Jerusalem that this is going to be, where these two men come. And it's spiritually, Jerusalem is called Sodom in Egypt. Not very good. And I believe Babylon could be added to this. I believe Jerusalem is the Babylon of the book of Revelation. In verse 9, Ke vlepusin ek ton leon, and we'll see from out of the peoples, Ke philon, and tribes, Ke glosson, and languages, Ke ethnon, and nations. So how are they going to see it? Until the internet and photography and so forth and cameras, there's no way that this could have happened until now. So now we can see, and we will be seeing, and people, it shows right here, they're all the languages and nations. So it's not only Israel. So all the people that are still left on the earth through all these terrible plagues going on, whoever is left will see, it says their corpses, tapatomata avton, imeratris, ke imisi, 3.5 days. And Jesus was in the dead for 3 days, and these are longer, half a day longer. Ke tapatomata avton uk afisusi tethine is menima, and they will not allow their corpses to be put in a tomb. Now, why? I don't know, but they're there, and when people to see it and to rot in front of everybody, terrible scene. So there's these two men, their bodies are laying there, and at 3.5 days, they start falling apart. And if it was out in the streets, and the animals could come and so forth. So they would not allow them to put them in the tomb. But with the Jews, this is a no-no. They are to be put in a tomb right away, I think the first day. But in their disrespect towards these two witnesses, they will not allow that. And it says, Ke ikatikuntas epitis gis harusin ep avtis, and the ones dwelling upon the earth will rejoice over them. So throughout the world, everybody is going to be happy over these two men that caused all these problems. Ke ephron thesonte, and will be glad. Ke thora pempsusin allelus, and will send gifts to one another. So they're happy to see these men dead. They don't want to hear their witness of Jesus, and this would probably be what the witness was. It doesn't say how their witness happens, but I'm sure they were witnessing about Christ and the resurrection and so forth, forgiveness of sins to them. And it says, Oti uti e theo profite evasanisan tus katikuntus epitigis, for these two prophets tormented the ones dwelling upon the earth. So it caused people on the earth a lot of problems. When they die, they're celebrating. Ke meta trisimeris, ke imisi, pneuma zois ek tutheu, isilthan ep avtis, ke estisen epi tus podas avton. And after 3.5 days, the breath, here's the breath of life. Remember we said pneuma, we doing a study. So here it's not spirit. You could put spirit of life, I suppose, from out of God, entered into them, or breath. Not wind. I wouldn't think wind would fit in the context here. But you now know that this word pneuma has more than one meaning from the studies I've shown. And you have a knowledge that nobody has had before with an English-only Bible, because it wouldn't bring that out. This, by having going into the Greek, now you're a translator, and you can study this without having to listen to somebody tell you what it means, or reading books and so forth. You'll now know, if you're going along with us in learning the basics of the Greek and so forth. So the breath of life from out of God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet. Phobos megas epicen epi tus theoruntas avtus, and great fear fell upon the ones viewing them. Now, who was the ones viewing them? Similar to the ones viewing the soldiers at the tomb, and great fear fell upon them. So when these two get up on their feet, and then what happens, it says, Keikusa phonin megalin ek tu uranu legusanavtis. And they heard a great voice from out of the heaven saying to them, as the voice was there at the transfiguration, they heard this voice. And another place when Jesus was when I think it was when he was on the cross, and the sound, and they heard it and so forth. And so that says, ascend here, anavite odi. So God is up, ascend. It's not going down or sideways, it's to ascend. Jesus says you have to be born from above. So ascend here. Jesus went up in a cloud. And ke anevisan is ton uranon inti nefeli. And they ascended into the heaven in the cloud. So the cloud is where Jesus was taken up into heaven. So this is how these two men are going to be taken up into heaven, the same way that Jesus was. Now, 2 Thessalonians doesn't say we're going to go up in a cloud. We're going to be snatched away. And that word is like a raptor bird, like an eagle, a hawk, owls. They see from far off a little mouse, and they just whammo. They can go hundreds of miles an hour in a dive, grab that mouse, and off they go with it to the nest where they chicks eat it. And so it's instantaneous. It's not going up in a cloud for us that will be alive at that time, if we are. And it says, Ke theorisan avtus e ekthri avton. And their enemies viewed them. So the people now, not like Jesus, that he appeared after the resurrection to people and they didn't recognize him, they are going to see it. And I'm sure if there's two witnesses are talking about a resurrection and so forth, and they're seeing this, it's going to make quite an impact on whoever is seeing what's going on. And if it's throughout the world on the internet, ooh, wow, what the biggest event in that time. In verse 13, Ke in akini ti imera ageneto seismos megas, and in that day a great earthquake took place. Ke to decaton tis polios epise, and the 10th of the city Jerusalem fell, a 10th part of it. Ke apektan thisan ento seismo onomata anthropon Heliades Epta, and were killed in the earthquake the names of 7,000 men. Now, are there more? Because it says men, children, and women, so forth, could have been more. So quite a few people will die in this earthquake. And then it says, Ke ilipi emphovi agenonto, and the rest became thrown into fear. People, Ke edokan doksan to theo to uranu, and gave glory to the God of the heavens. So now they do see God's hand working. And it finishes and says, E ue e devtera apilthan e ue titriti, idu urkate taki. The second woe departed, the third woe, behold, it comes quickly, and we're warned that the next three woes, 5, 6, and 7, are going to be really bad. And so to go on further, you can always open up the Bible to the book of Revelation 2:11. I don't know what next verse would be, but either 15 or chapter 12. Now, next we are going to go into the book of Acts, and it begins with a person called Theophilus, and we'll find out about that next.